My name is Vinny Civitello. I'm the Communications Director at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, and we are so glad you could make it for today's Lessons in Leadership event. During this session, we invite you to please place any questions you may have in the chat box. Steve and Michelle will be watching it as we move along, and they'll answer questions as appropriate. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers. Steve Adubato is a broadcaster, author, and motivational speaker. He is an Emmy Award-winning anchor for programs airing on 13 WNET and NJPBS. He is a media and political analyst and is also the host of Steve Adubato's Lessons in Leadership with co-host Mary Gamba, which airs on News 12 Plus and is based on his book, Lessons in Leadership. Michele Siekerka, Esquire, President and CEO of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, leads the nation's largest, most influential employers organization, advocating on behalf of New Jersey's large and small businesses for policies that will make New Jersey more affordable and regionally competitive. Being known as a collaborative leader, Siekerka is leading an NJBIA-established coalition comprised of more than 100 business and nonprofit associations across the state to tackle the tough economic and business challenges our state is facing during COVID-19. Well-versed on the boots-on-the-ground issues affecting our state's business community, Michele is often the go-to resource for media and is sought after to share her expertise in public forums across the state. And with that, Steve and Michele, take us away.
Vinny, well said. Thank you for teeing it up. And Michele,
anytime.
And Michele is the go-to person when it comes to business matters in this state. And I just want to welcome everyone on behalf of our team at Stand and Deliver. That is our leadership and development communication company. My colleague and co-anchor of our Lessons in Leadership podcast, Mary Gamba, is working with the team, Vinny, behind the scenes at BIA to make things happen. Michele, it's my honor to join you and the great team at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association to engage. And as we've done this before, an interactive, conversational, very candid discussion about leadership in 2023.
2023. How'd we get here, Steve?
Yeah, and it'll be 3 years, I believe. Look, let's look at it as March 13th, 2020. That'll be 3 years that we're dealing with COVID. Let me ask you this, Michele, and there, feel free during this conversation we have with Michele to engage in the chat, ask some questions. Mary Gamba, Vinny are managing those questions. We'll get as many in as we can. Michele, you and I've talked about this on Lessons in Leadership, but I want to put it out there publicly in front of over 150 people who have chosen to participate with a very busy schedule. You've joined us today, and we thank you. The most significant way you have changed as a leader in these 3 years is what?
Wow, a lot more self-awareness. And I think the biggest takeaway for me over the last 3 years, and I'm going to credit my incredible right arm, Heather Hansberry, with this. Steve, I can't fix everything. I am by nature a problem solver and a fixer. And I've learned over the last 3 years to take control of the things that I can take control of. And those things that I can't fix, I have to step back. I have to do best to mitigate the noise that's coming from that, lean into it, see where I can perhaps from the periphery be of assistance to it. But I've had to accept the fact, very hard for me, that I can't fix everything, both personally and professionally.
You know, as I'm listening to you, Michele, and we've had so many conversations offline about life and leadership and family and business, and the fact that the lines are more blurred than ever before.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about this. You said recently in a conversation we were having that we should be, quote, I'm going to steal this and I will credit you, noise-free in 23. What the heck does that mean, and how does it relate to our well-being? I'm going to conflate things, but I've been thinking a lot about leadership and well-being, our well-being and leadership. And then I heard noise-free in 23, and I'm thinking that has something to do with being introspective and just a bit more quiet. Am I making too much of that?
No. And that is exactly, I mean, I said I'm coming into 2023 noise-free in 23. And what I mean by that is we all can define what our noise is. So if you need a visual, we all love the Peanuts, right? Think of Pigpen and think of the dust that follows him around his dust bowl. To me, that dust bowl is the noise. And I need to cut through the noise so I can get back to being myopically focused on the things that I can control and move the needle on, and not let these distractions, this unnecessary noise, get me off my game. And I attribute all of that to what we've done here in leadership at NJBIA, right? It's the hedgehog. It's the Jim Collins hedgehog. My gosh, I've got
Jim
millions.
Collins, good to great Jim Collins? That
Yes,
Jim Collins?
Yes,
What's
good to
this?
great. Good to great. These are hedgehogs. I've got every type of them all over my office. There's like another one sitting back there. I got hedgehogs all over. The hedgehog is the animal that is myopically focused on its existence and understands keep your eye on your enemy, which is that fox that's always in the prairie trying to get them. But understand what makes you strong in the moment to overcome so that fox can't get the best of you. And from a leadership perspective, what that means in strategic planning, Steve, it's the 3 concentric circles, right? Either individually or professionally. What am I most passionate about? What am I great at? And what drives the economic engine? That's Jim Collins. When you overlap those 3 circles, the interconnectivity in the middle is your sweet spot, the hedgehog spot. And when you myopically focus on that hedgehog spot, you keep your eye on the prize and you march forward.
You know, you're quoting Jim Collins, who wrote an extraordinary book called Good to Great several years ago. And for those of us who do leadership coaching, Jim Collins is the best of the best. But it also struck me because I'm obviously doing this in this seminar with you in a library that we built in our home. We're fortunate enough to be able to do that. And I've got a whole bunch of leadership books around me. Trust me, Good to Great is in there somewhere. And I'll tell you why I'm mentioning this. Well, what's interesting is I've had many conversations with you where you are mentioning a new book that you came across, a concept. And so one of the themes in my book, Lessons in Leadership, you know, I can't imagine how it just got right there automatically. That being said, in a new book I've been working on with Mary Gamba for the last couple of years, we talk a lot about lifelong learning. And I don't want to turn this into a cliche, oh, leaders are lifelong learners. But my sense is in the last several years, we have turned inward in a way that hopefully is healthy, in that we're trying to be more introspective. We're trying to understand ourselves as leaders, our strengths, our opportunities to grow. But also, frankly, I'm reading more than ever. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But because I will say, well, we don't know it all. My big thing, like, I don't know what I don't know, number one. And number two, I don't have to reinvent the wheel, because chances are somebody out there already considered that thought in my mind. And number three, everybody has a different perspective, and I want to understand all the different perspectives. My kind of joke in the morning, which is not reading, but is listening, is I will listen to 2 different radio stations because I want to get 2 different perspectives. Classic example, go from Fox News to MSNBC, and you know that whatever's going on somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So about balance and about learning things. But Steve, on the reading path, you know, I will always say I've probably read every potential self-help book when I was a parent of younger children. My twins are now 31. I try to read as best I can the professional books that drive towards some either competency or issue that I want to reflect on or get from. But I balance my reading now, and I read off the grid too. Because
really?
I need refresh. I need downtime. I need to read a great John Grisham book, because I love Grisham as a lawyer, right? I love to read good fiction books where I can, you know, just and nonfiction where I can just go and let my head be somewhere else, so that when I come back to where I need to be, I'm refreshed and I'm rejuvenated.
You're listening to us right now. You're watching us right now. I'm Michele Siekerka, the team at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, our team at Stand and Deliver, our leadership and communication development company. We decided to come together and engage in this 45-minute or so conversation around leadership in these very challenging times. And to Mary Gambit and Vinny, whatever questions you have, do not hesitate to let us know that you have them. Mary, you can either text me, let me know we have them, but I want to make sure we let everyone know there's an opportunity in the chat to ask a question of Michele. Myself will engage in conversation. Michele, follow up on this. I want to get a little more granular with you. I mentioned before, I've been thinking a lot about leadership and wellness. Now, it isn't just our own well-being and our own wellness as leaders, who's working out more, who's taking a walk, who's reading more, who's spending more time with family, our well-being. But there's another question, and I want to put on the table is, in these very stressful times, what are a couple of actions that we as leaders can and should be taking to promote the well-being of our team members? Now, for us, I'll be very candid. We have a 10-person team. We've gone all remote. All of our broadcasts are remote on our public television production company, along with our partners at NJPBS and WNET. We broadcast remotely. Our team is remote. Not every organization can do that. Not every business can do that. Some people are saying, come back into the office 3, 4, 5 days a week, whatever it is. What are a couple of actions that you have taken and you want to recommend to others to promote the wellness, the well-being of team members while we're still trying to be productive and make a profit? And the bottom line's right. Our people's well-being matters, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Lean in and listen to what they need. Really listen to your workforce, engage them, and engage them one-on-one, not just as a group. I try twice a year. Our staff's about 32, give or take,
Right.
FTE. I try at least twice a year. I started out monthly, quarterly, couldn't do that, right? But I tried, especially during COVID, to have a one-on-one with everybody on my staff. Number one, in a remote environment, I needed to look them in the eye. I needed to see them in their space, and I needed to understand the circumstances under which they were bringing their game to our company each and every day, right? And so, because when we sent everybody home a few years ago, and everybody talked about, work from home, what really happened is we imposed our office into someone's home space.
That's right.
And remember how people were hiding behind their video? And I was like, no. I'm in your home. I'm in your private space. If that's where your children are playing, or your cat is running, or your dog is barking, let it be. I've come into your home, right? But I have to listen. And so that one-on-one has been significant to me to understand, because when I can look them in the eye, because I can't walk around the building here and see them in their cube, I can see honestly and transparently if what they're telling me visually is if they're in a good place or not, because you can see the stress, you can feel the pain. So that's one thing. Connect directly one-on-one with your team. Maybe difficult for a really large company, but find a way to make it happen. And town halls are good, or smaller group if you can't get one-on-one, right? But try to make the effort. Walk the building like maybe you did before, and stop in and check on your teammates. It's really important. Number two, lead by example. If you are telling your staff, right, that they need to get off the grid, that they need to refresh, that they need to take their vacation time, because in COVID, as you know, people are like, well, I'm working from home, I can't go anywhere, I'm not taking vacation time. I said, take your vacation time, get a good book, or go binge watch a show, right? But if I don't show that I'm doing that, if I don't show that I take a day off to go take care of my mother when I have to, they're going to feel like they're guilty doing that. And so I think we need to set a standard for wellness and balance in the workplace.
You know, and I see the questions coming in already. Mary, I'm going to, because I'm going to screw up this chat. Mary, we can hear you on the audio, and Mary or Vinny. Could you just tell us what that question is that's coming out in the chat? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Mary.
definitely. Some people have actually pinned me individually as well. And one of them was talking about small businesses. How do they compete with larger companies who can offer hybrid or work from home environments? So how are our smaller businesses in New Jersey competing?
I love that one. So Michele, let me take a little the twist on that. Has it not become, we lost last year about this time one of the most talented people on our team that we didn't see it happening. And afterwards, Mary and I were like, what should we have done? What could we have done? Doesn't it make it, or does it make it more difficult if you're making decisions about what you expect, who needs to be in the office, when they need to be in the office, and others are saying, well, you could be all remote? Does it not make it more difficult to retain your most talented people if you're trying to make decisions? I know this is a loaded question. You're trying to make decisions that help the organization be productive and profitable, but at the same time, you're trying to cater to people and what they want and need, and that's all different with everyone. And then you're trying to retain the best people. I think there's a question there, and I'm not sure, Michele. Go ahead.
No, I get it. I mean, this is the biggest thing right now for anybody running a company, and this is an organic process. We're not there yet, Steve. Okay. 3 years ago, we all went home. We thought we were coming back in 2 weeks. Then it was a year. Then it was 2 years. And then we came back in different ways, right? So number one, what works for your organization, your workforce, your culture, and the people who you serve, or the product that you make, right? you got to have that strategic discussion of what's different and what's new, and how do you deliver it best, and how does everybody who's a stakeholder in that win, right? Where's the win for your workforce? Where's the win for those you're serving or the product you're making? Any consumer who's out there, anyone who's invested in you and what you're doing, what does it mean to everybody, right? Look, you can't, if you're a retail company, guess what? Right. You're bricks and sticks. And that's all about innovation and reinventing your business model. I think we're going to come back to innovation later, right?
Sure.
But how do you better enable yourself to compete with a remote and non-bricks and sticks company? But when it comes to those who can provide some ability to have hybrid work or flexible work environment, I will suggest that any leader who is not leaning into a way to make that happen in some regard is not going to be able to retain or recruit the best and the brightest, because not just the next generation, but every worker, almost to a T, is looking for that right now.
So, and Mary, I mean, Mary's right back, because I know that clearly there are more questions, and keep them coming in the chat.
Yeah, well, just because before we moved on to the next topic, I did want to say Robin had just had a follow up to that question as far as how then these businesses could compete in terms of the minimum wage, removing all learning workers that have helped small business owners survive. So just before we moved on to the next topic, I thought that was really helpful from Robin.
Take it, Michele.
Well, minimum wage is a challenging issue today because we said this before, at some point, the economy and the market is going to dictate what minimum wage is. So I want to go back to the whole concept that minimum wage is a floor. It's a starting place, and it's an entry point for people. That's historically what minimum wage was about, right? Give people a fair way to get into the game. Now, from there, I think that it's incumbent upon every person to a T to build their own skills so that they can continue to grow from what is an entry-level minimum wage. But we get it. We created this as a society over the last couple decades when we stopped making things, right, here in the country and in the state, and we went so much into the idea of service industry. We created a monster in that those types of jobs dictate a certain type of wage and work environment that's different than when we made things. And so we have to come back to this idea now of skill building and recognizing the opportunity to lift people up, not just horizontally, not just vertically, but horizontally, right? And as we see, the economy is driving minimum wage. People ask me, I spent the whole first couple of last few weeks on interviews about minimum wage. We're at 14.10. What does that mean to the economy? I'm like, what does it mean to the economy? To compete, people are paying 16 and 17. So minimum wage is almost a secondary, issue today in one regard. The challenge for people, Steve, is some of our most vulnerable population, nursing homes, right? Entry level, medical assistants. These are people who are all still at a very low wage, who are working with our most vulnerable. And the challenge is now that the economy has driven a job like working at Burger King, for example, making a milkshake or flipping a burger might be better than changing a bedpan. Why am I going to go change a bedpan for 16 bucks if I can flip a burger for 16 bucks? And that's the issue in our economy today that everyone is grappling with. And this is where I come back to have the right culture, right? Treat your people fair and respect, listen to them. And I think if you have a right culture, people are looking for more than just wage today.
But not everyone's looking for the same thing. And it goes back to your point about spending one-on-one time with your people, with each person, because they do want different things. And someone said, I was doing a leadership seminar, and someone said, I treat all my people equally. So I said, do you treat all your people equally? Yes, I treat them all the same. So I said, well, hold on one second. You treat them all the same, but they're not all the same. I know, but we have to so I said, no, I want to understand something. I'm a big fan of treating everyone fairly, but not equally. And I'll tell you what, like Mary Gamba, my colleague, I mention her a lot because she runs our Stand and Deliver company. She's a leader on our not-for-profit production company in cooperation with NJPBS, as I said. But Mary is treated differently than other people. And other people are treated differently than other people because they have different needs. They have different skills. They contribute in different ways to the company. And I'm sitting there going, why don't we just pay everyone the same? Why doesn't everyone have the same situation? Well, because they're all different, but you want to believe they're treated fairly. Real quick on this, because I want to talk about meetings, which, trust me, I'm going to go on a rant about we're meeting mania. How about this? I have this plaque I've been using. Hopefully everyone can see this.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a second. What's the difference between treating everyone equally versus treating everyone fairly?
Yeah. Again, you summed it up rather well, right? It's all about understanding that, okay, it's understanding that person and what their needs are in their role and what they give to your organization and what they bring to the table, and balancing that with what the company needs. Now, let's be fair. I'm like you, right? I have 90% of my workforce working hybrid, flexible, remote, whatever you want to call it, okay? But I have certain operations people that they need to be here every day. And that's the job. So you either you choose that, right? Because that's the space you want to be in, or you say, I'm opting out of that type of job because I want to be remote. And then you got to flip your skills around and go look for something that you're going to be, eligible for. The challenge for the people who are in the buildings today, and I feel for this situation, I got maybe 4 people who are here all the time. Everybody else comes and goes. On any given day, I could have 20 people. The next day, it's those 4 again. Another day, it might be 2. Those soldiers who are holding up the fort back home, right? They're getting a little lonely. They're used to having a big workforce around them. And here they are, like, floating around the building a little bit, by themselves. And so we try to make sure that we're engaging them like they're in the Zoom world with us remote. Get them in meetings that's drawing in what we're doing in the remote world. Don't just say, hey, they're in the building. No, pull them into what's going on in our virtual world, as well.
That requires a tremendous amount of attention, focus, being strategic, and being engaged. So let me do this meeting thing. But Mary, hold on. Mary and Vinny, I know there's another question. Before we do this meeting thing, I want to make sure we get as many folks into this conversation as possible. Mary, who do you have? Vinny, who do you have?
Yeah, definitely. So it was just a follow up on the minimum wage. If it goes too high, it may put people over the income limits for social services, housing, SNAP, healthcare. So what thoughts do you have on that?
Hold on. I'm going to make sure we book Michele for our State of Affairs public policy program, seen every week on NJPBS and WNET. We'll do some of those public policy questions. I don't want to, Mary, Michele, give us a quick response to that, because that's,
and then I have another one as well.
That is a leadership question, but it's also a policy question. And I want to make sure this is largely about leadership. Go ahead on that, Michele, real quick.
Well, I'll just say on the leadership side, the challenge right there for a lot of people during COVID was that employees could make more on the extra federal subsidy that was attached to unemployment during COVID. As a leader, I had lots of employers that said, I got to do right by my employee and keep them out of work so they can collect unemployment and not call them back.
You mean work the system?
I know it sounds crazy. Well, you know what it was? A lot of the workforce was coming back and asking the employer to work the system, and the employer wasn't going to do that. Pay me off the books, do this, do that. Like, I'm not going to do that. Okay. But, am I going to say, okay, we'll wait 2 more weeks to come back because you're making $18 there and you're only making 16 here. And for the good of you, I'll let you collect that extra 2. That absolutely was going on. We're not going to pretend it wasn't. It was going on.
Thank you for that quick response. Mary, what do you got? And then we're doing meetings.
One more follow-up, totally different topic, succession planning in a hybrid remote workplace. How do you train your replacement if you're remote? And I think, Steve, you and I have talked about that as well. If you have younger people coming to the workforce, it's that much more challenging. So,
yeah, Michele, I'm a huge fan of leadership development, obviously, because it's also our business. We train and coach people in leadership development. But I also believe that if you're not developing people and they're not getting better and you're not helping them to prepare to take on a bigger portfolio of responsibilities and they're not elevating, then we're doing something wrong. So A, succession planning, how you do it in this environment. And B, are you actually planning, Michele? I actually wrote a chapter in this new book coming out later this year on retirement. And I thought, why would I retire? I love what I'm doing. And someone says, yeah, wouldn't you want to chill later on? And I'm like, well, who's my replacement? Do you actually, I'm going to do this one first. You're shaking your head. Are you actually planning for your succession?
As a good leader, you should be planning your succession each and every day.
I don't want to go anywhere, Michele.
It doesn't mean you're going anywhere, but I hate to say this, Steve, but if there's some erratic bus that runs you over tomorrow, what's going to happen to your company? Right. So succession planning isn't just about taking the voluntarily leaving the organization. Stuff happens. It could be crisis. And you never want to be in a crisis situation. As a good leader, you never want to leave your company hanging in a crisis situation. So, it's incumbent to always look and say, So where are the potential successors inside? What do they need to become the successor tomorrow if I get hit by that erratic bus? And if I don't have them, what is going to be the process to get somebody on board really quick? What's the contingency plan, right?
You got to think about these things.
Yeah, sometimes those are the things
It's not fun.
People, right? No, that's what would you call that? The tough stuff? That's the tough stuff.
Yeah, what a great name for a book, Lessons in Leadership, the tough stuff.
Where'd I get that?
Yeah. So speaking of tough stuff, let's do this. And Mary and Vinny, don't hold back with questions. Don't even wait for me to ask for it. But I want to do this meeting thing. So I started talking about wellness before, and someone might say, well, what the heck? Why are meetings connected to wellness? And I'll tell you why. I was coaching a client one-on-one a few months ago, and it was this client. It was 4:00 in the afternoon, and this person was in the office, but it was her 10th meeting of the day. And I looked and I said, you look exhausted. And she said, well, I'm exhausted. It is my 10th meeting of the day. Here's my question. As leaders, I know what I believe, which is that we have too many meetings. We have too many meetings that go on too long. We have too many meetings that go on too long that should have or could have been an email. And sometimes the wrong people are in the meeting that don't really need to be in the meeting. And the cumulative effect of it is that we are exhausted from meetings, and then we got all of our other work to do in the meantime. Question here. To what degree have you, as a leader, stepped back and said, wait a minute, do we even really need a meeting to do this? Could this be a phone call, a text, an email? And does everyone need to be in there? And how the heck do you manage not only limiting the number of meetings, but having them not go on as long, please?
So at our recent staff retreat here at NJBIA, a big part of what we discussed about was, communication in the remote world. Not just and the importance of keeping people connected, but ensuring that we're working as smart as possible and being effective and efficient, because the reality was people are burning out from 10 hours of Zoom meetings without even 5 minutes to run to the restroom in between, or else you're late for the next meeting. So we agreed, and we have guardrails in place. And it's so funny, we just had our staff meeting this morning, and I reiterated some permissions we've given everybody. So it goes a whole bunch of ways. So number one, guardrails, right? Any internal meeting is 50 minutes.
50
minutes,
that's it.
50. That means you get 10 minutes. If you're going by the hour, you get 10 minutes to stretch, use the restroom, grab a coffee, okay? You're not going at 11:59 and a half to noon, jumping into, literally, let me just zoom over here, and you've never gotten out of your chair for 4 hours, okay? So sure, is there exception to the rule? And then you ask permission. Hey, by the way, you okay for another 5 minutes, Or you're backing up, you have a hard stop. Always ask, what's your hard stop? And make sure you leave people a little bit of sway in there, right? The second piece, though, of permissions is, again, this goes both ways. We've opened up some of our meetings, which were just for a select group, to say, our communications meeting, for example, hey, if anybody in the entire organization wants to hear more what's going on, you feel like you're a little out of the loop, go sit in the bleachers of this meeting and listen in. It's an open meeting for everybody. And of course, feel free to input if you want. That's one part of giving people more opportunity to listen to what they think they're missing on communication. The flip side of this, we've given people permission to say, you don't need me in that meeting. If you're a regular attendee and you see the agenda and you say, there's nothing that I can offer to that meeting this time, you have permission to opt out of the meeting and go use that hour for something else. So this is, you have to do this stuff with intention now. It's not just going to organically happen. You got to set some guardrails. You got to have some transparency about what works and doesn't work. And then the last piece, Steve, is what type of communication for what type of way.
What do you mean?
When should you text? When should you email? When should you telephone? And when should you Zoom?
Yeah.
And we can all have an example of when we had the wrong method of communication for a particular dialogue that we wanted to have.
So Michelle raises a great point, and I want to stay on this for just a minute. So I've often asked my clients, our clients at Stand and Deliver, and by the way, if you want to log on to our website, it's stand-deliver.com, stand-deliver.com. And there are free articles, information, and also this particular webinar, whatever we want to call it today, will be posted in the next couple of weeks, as it will be on the BIA site as well. So I often ask my clients, our clients, Michelle, why are you having that meeting? And they'll say, what do you mean? Well, you're meeting at Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Why do you have that meeting? And the response will be, Well, because that's what we do every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. So I said, but yeah, but what's the purpose of that meeting? What do you mean, what's the purpose? It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, we're meeting. And so this is what I say. You need to be more intentional, the word you're using, but also strategic. If there isn't a reason to have the meeting, then as we said, then it could have been an email or wherever else it needs to be. But we need to be strategic leaders and asking ourselves, why are we even doing this? What is the purpose of this meeting? A, and B, this is the other part that gets tricky. I'm a big believer that if you're going to have a meeting, Michele, as a leader, you need to facilitate that meeting. And my clients will say, well, what do you mean facilitate? And I say, you need to forcefully engage people. What do you mean forcefully engage people? So I'll get off my soapbox on this, Michele. I've coached people to ask specific team members in a meeting a specific question for a specific reason because there's a specific agenda item. And my clients will say, well, what do you mean? Actually call people? You would call Michele out? I said, no, I will invite Michele into the meeting because otherwise, Michele, what happens if you don't call people into the meeting, invite them? Is it not that the same 2 or 3 people are the same ones doing and talking all the time? Go ahead, I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and then you have others who say, you know, well, I wasn't engaged. Let's face it, everybody has a different personality. Not everybody is as boisterous as you and I are, Steve, okay?
True.
You and I sitting in a meeting, we have to hold ourselves back. You know, there's reasons why my team doesn't invite me to certain meetings. Okay. So I don't want to come in and blow up the agenda. All right. I know you got the same thing, but there are shy people and there are people who need to understand. And again, rules of engagement, that their opinion and their input is significantly important because they bring a certain perspective or a certain skill set or a certain competency that other people have to hear about. And so there are absolutely ways to tee it up that it's not Socratic method like I had first day in law school. Siekerka, what does, XYZ case mean? What'd that judge say? And I got some professor embarrassing me in front of a class. There's ways that you, again, set expectations for a meeting. I'm going to be looking for everyone's input. Ahead of time, I want you to all think about this particular issue.
And come into the meeting with that. Go ahead, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. We're talking about... Okay, go ahead.
You and because we're on the wavelength. That's why I love these discussions, because we agree. When you set the expectation and you ask people to prepare to come into the meeting, bring one nugget, and if it's appropriate, share the nugget. And if it's not appropriate, take the nugget home with you.
Yeah. Real quick, I know there's another question. I often say, see how Michele just said, come into the meeting with one recommendation, one idea, one challenge, one whatever it is. I say, why don't we raise the bar for our meetings? Because right now, here's the requirement for a meeting. You apparently have a pulse. It's so low. You have a pulse. Apparently, you're also, if you're remote, you're sometimes cheating on your phone, but no one can see you doing it. The bar is too low. Raise the bar and invite people in, but without pointing the finger, like you said in law school. Like that is about potentially embarrassing people or making people feel unnecessarily uncomfortable. I would argue, invite them in, create that environment where we need you. We need your point of view. I'm sorry, I'm off my soapbox. Mary, Vinny, what's the next question?
Absolutely. Kenny asks, any thoughts on creative recruitment ideas? Seems that many companies are having trouble finding new talent.
Creative recruitment. Oh, wow. Go ahead, Michele. Creative recruiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's start with, we have a workforce crisis in that there are more jobs than there are people to fill jobs. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I'm going to go right back to skill building, right? We have a lot of jobs that you need a certain set of skills that people just don't have. We at BIA, we're really proud of our collaboration with the New Jersey Council of Community Colleges and a 2-year grant through our state government and an appropriation for career pathways. And that is to build in-demand skill sets for in-demand jobs. NJ Career Pathways, check it out if you want to learn about how we're building the workforce for in-demand jobs. Okay. The second challenge, though, is, again, how people want to work and what they bring to the table. So how are you marrying the ability to attract the workforce? That's going to be all about how do you write the job description? Where do you place the job description? I will tell you again here, we've changed how we recruit by way of the job descriptions that we put up for many reasons. DEI, certain things that you ask about years of experience or education, certain buzzwords that either turn people on or turn people off, right? And then, you know, certainly a job has certain specific competencies it needs that you have to address, but how you word it and where you put it is really important. But there's a third aspect to this too, where this is only going to get harder because our demographics are changing. We're going to probably have, I'm going to guess, there's going to be a good decade of extremely low birth rates that are coming up through the pipeline right now. You think it's hard to recruit right now? I'm going to tell you 10 years from now. And why I say that is things that we did, and you and I are pretty much contemporary, things that we did in our 20s, the next generation is doing in their 30s. And that 10 years includes raising
what's
children.
that about? What do you mean?
So, you know, maybe I'm an exception, right? But I'll put it out there, right? I'm 58. I got married when I was 21, my high school sweetheart. We're together 37 years, right? I had my kids when I was 27, and I had my career kind of off and running.
Right, okay.
It was a different time. I didn't stop and think about, let me take a gap year to go have a life experience. You know, I'm not ready to settle down because there's too much for me to explore and see out there. And we've empowered that in the next generation. Go live life, right? I'm not saying it's a negative, but the reality has been, and also because of cost and affordability, right? As a reality, my 31-year-old twins, right? The things they're doing in their 30s or haven't even gotten to yet are things that I was doing like in my 20s. It's just a generational issue. That means low birth rate. It's taking me back to the fact that there's going to be less of a work. You're going to start seeing kindergarten enrollment go down. That's our future workforce coming up through the pipeline. And you could talk to folks like Jim Hughes on this, who studies demographics.
Jim Hughes at Rutgers.
There is, I mean, this is something real that's staring us down, and we're seeing just the beginning of it now. This is only going to get more challenging, and that's why skill building is so important. Matching good skills to good jobs.
So if you wonder why this new book is called Lessons in Leadership 2.0, the tough stuff, Michelle's talking about some pretty tough stuff. I hadn't even, oh my God, I'm thinking about how challenging it is to recruit and develop people into your team now. Michelle's saying it's going to be even more challenging moving forward, which requires us to be more innovative, more creative, more imaginative. Mary, Vinny, go. I see a bunch more questions in the chat, please. Mary, Vinny.
I am coming. And one of the questions, somebody pinged me, I'm getting some questions as well, just emailed directly to me. And it was about the Great Resignation and if we're seeing any bounce back from that. I'm assuming, and I don't know if someone wants to share more in the chat, but what they're talking about is obviously when COVID first started, people were leaving. Are we seeing now that people are tending to stay and plant their roots?
And by the way, let me do this, Michelle. Mary Gamba, my colleague at Stand and Deliver, check out Mary and I every Sunday, Lessons in Leadership. 10 o'clock every Sunday on News 12 Plus for Lessons in Leadership. Michelle, now there's a show that precedes us at 9:30 in the morning on News 12 Plus that has a big NJBIA logo on it. What is that show?
Minding Your Business, hosted by our own Bob Considine.
Listen, that's embarrassingly plugging us publicly. That's okay. So, Mary,
think about that awesome hour you can have with a cup of coffee. My gosh.
There it is, 9:30 to 10:30 Sunday. Oh, yeah. And then there's Think Tank right after that, which is our public television show that airs on News 12 Plus 10.
Yep.
So Mary,
and we also have, so we had that question about Great Resignation. And then we just had Tim also put something in and we could obviously attack both. What are your thoughts about the level of workplace innovation occurring in companies whose employees work remotely hybrid versus those that are working 100% in the office?
Okay, let's get a couple things going on.
Yep.
Michelle, let's do the innovation thing, all right? Innovating isn't an option. It's not, well, we're going to innovate or we're not going to innovate. I don't even understand that. We went from March 2020, literally within days, we were in studio in New York at our the WNET studio, the Tisch WNET studio, and you were in the NJ at the time, NJ TV, now NJ PBS, the studio in Newark. We had to go remote, and we pivoted along with millions of other organizations across this country, and we never stopped innovating. We changed our marketing strategy. We hired an outside firm to lead our marketing, and we changed our team structure, and we changed change and innovation is a never-ending leadership mindset, is it not?
100%. 100%. You know, we live in a dynamic world that's changing, not even by the week or the day anymore. It's like by the hour. And so if you're not consistently staying 2 steps ahead, then you've fallen at least 5 steps behind. You know, we said very early on in COVID that any company that wasn't immediately thinking about how to reinvent themselves, how to rethink their business model, particularly I'll go back to, you know, retail, Main Street,
restaurants.
You can still be, and you have to be bricks and sticks. You're an experienced type of, you know, company, if you will. But how do you marry that? The restaurants that made it were the ones that immediately got up a delivery system, that immediately found a way to take orders and have someone deliver them or have someone come and pick it up curbside, right? The ones that didn't do that were gone in 6 months, right? And then we empowered them too by saying, hey, get out of the 4 walls of your building and let's go back to sitting on sidewalks and things like that. All of that's reinvention, but technology. Embrace a technology system. I want to thank, you know, publicly the EDA, because some of the grants there were for technology in small companies.
Tim Sullivan and the team at the EDA, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we say, and look, I'll just say real quick, right? We do thank the governor, the administration, and particularly EDA for the programs that stood up during COVID. Almost everyone, the day it was up, it was oversubscribed. We need so much more business relief. Tip of the spear. You know, tip of the spear. We need much more investment in affordability and innovation for New Jersey small business, right? We're going to keep pounding on that. So my 2 cents on policy there. But reinventing and making the next best iteration of yourself. If you're not consistently thinking with the mind of and spirit of an entrepreneur, with everyday thinking of yourself as you're a new startup company, and what does that mean? And how do you stay 2 steps ahead to keep up with your competition? Like I said, you're going to fall 5 steps behind.
Before we're going to wrap up in just a couple of minutes, because I want to practice what Michele and I have been preaching, which is you don't run meeting into meeting. And I know folks, very often you'll have a 12 o'clock meeting, even though we should be having lunch, but most of us have a 12 o'clock. So we're not going to go to 11:59. We're going to end just in the next couple of minutes. But I want to end on this for you, Michele. I mentioned before, we were talking about retirement. For me, I've never felt more engaged and interested in what we're doing and challenged and excited, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure there's some people who say, well, it's time to retire. But for me, it doesn't work, meaning I'm constantly challenged intellectually and otherwise. What keeps you as motivated as you are as a leader?
Great question. I really like diversity in what I do because I can get bored pretty easily. And to that end, though, I am always looking for what's the next best slice of white bread, and how can I personally, individually, and with my organization take us to that next best thing. And so in that, I'm always creating a new goal. I've lived my whole life. I have the crystal ball approach. Where do I want to be in 5 years? What do I see in 5 years? And how am I kind of blazing the path there? I'm pretty intentional with things. So what keeps me motivated is I enjoy what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. I have said this many times, Steve. If I wake up 3 days in a row, I give myself 3 days. If I wake up 3 days in a row beaten down by New Jersey policy or my job, it's time for me to move on. I'll give myself 1 day. I'll even give myself 2 days. But that 3rd day, I either need to get my proverbial SHIT together, or I got to hit the road because I am no good to my organization and the people that I represent.
I am glad you haven't hit those 3 days, because your service, the work of NJBIA makes such a difference in this state. So let me just say, Michele, I'll give you the final word, but I'm going to say on behalf of our team at Stand and Deliver, and please visit our website. Everything is free there, meaning all the articles, all the information, stand-deliver.com. On behalf of Mary Gamba and my team, I want to say thank you to Mary and Vinny, everyone behind the scenes who made, again, Michele and I are on camera right now, and we can't thank all of you enough for joining us. Over 150 participants today, but the people behind the scenes make it happen. So, Michele, I am honored to once again join you in this platform and have an important, compelling, and honest discussion about leadership, the challenges and the opportunities we have to be the best. We never stop learning. So I want to thank you and the great team at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. You have the final goodbye and the final word, Michele, please.
Well, thank you. I echo the spirit of collaboration and really, truly appreciate and adore what we have created over the last few years. And I think discussions like this, I mean, you and I, we tried it. We try to get raw. We try to tell it like it is. It's lonely at the top. You need to lean on people who are in your space who understand the challenges, but also who are hepped up on looking for the opportunities. We need to lift each other up, but when we've kind of fallen down a little, we need to lean on each other to pull us up. And I think that's what makes us stronger. But I say this collectively to the leaders of New Jersey. What an incredible business community we have here in the state of New Jersey, right? Great businesses make great communities. New Jersey businesses are the reason why New Jersey communities thrive and survive, not just during COVID, but all the time. And when I wake up every day and put my boots on the ground, I am incredibly proud of the business community that I get to represent. And of course, I just happen to have the pleasure and the privilege of being the leader of this awesome organization, right? The team that stands behind me is second to none. Those who helped to put this program on today are lobbyists, all our membership people, my operations people, my marketing people, New Jersey Business Award-winning magazine people, right? Our communications. I mean, I go on and on. So, Steve, the reason why this works is we have two amazing teams who get it, right? And we have the spirit of collaboration to make good things happen. I look forward to doing that in 2023 and beyond.
Real quick, Michele, what is again 23? What noise?
Noise free in 23.
On that note, thank you, Michele. Thank you, everyone. We wish everyone all the best. Have a great 2023, all of us leaders who are learning every day and struggling to try to get better. Thank you, Vinny. Thank you, Mary. Hey, Vinny, go ahead. You're going to say the formal goodbye. Go ahead.
Yes, and thank you, Steve. Thank you, Michele. Noise-free in 23, we could all benefit from that. Thank you for your insight, and thank you to our audience for joining us this morning. Don't forget, all of you will be receiving a recording of today's presentation. NJBIA will be launching a leadership series in 2023, so keep on the lookout for emails related to that. And by all means, feel free to register for events at njbia.org/events. So until next time, for Steve Adubato and Michele Siekerka, I'm Vinny Civitello, thanking you for being with us this morning and wishing you a great day.